She sold the house, but wasn't even on the deed. How did that pass?
We sold your house. That was the first message I saw when I woke up. Not from a stranger, not from a scam number, from my sister. Let me ask you something. What would you do if you opened your phone and someone told you your entire life had just been sold off without you? Because I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I just stared at it. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beep of the monitor beside me. My arm felt heavy, IV still taped in place, body stiff from 3 days of barely moving. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air, like something permanent. And then the second message came in. You were in the hospital, you didn't need it. Didn't need it. I actually let out a small breath at that. Not a laugh, not anger, just disbelief maybe. The kind that settles in slowly, like your brain refuses to process what it already understands. Then the third message, I signed for you. Haha. Haha. That part mattered more than anything else. Not the house, not the sale, not even the fact that she admitted to signing my name. It was the haha. That told me everything. I shifted slightly in the bed, wincing as pain shot through my ribs, reminder of the accident that put me here in the first place. A driver ran a red light, metal crunched, glass shattered. And just like that, I was pulled out of my own life and dropped into this quiet, controlled space where everything moved slower, except apparently my sister. Rachel Carter, 38. Always decisive, always handling things. That's how she described it. Handling things. Growing up, that meant she spoke for me, signed permission slips when I forgot, told people what I meant when I didn't say anything. It always came off as helpful, protective, even. Until it wasn't. I picked up my phone again, rereading the messages carefully this time. Not emotionally, not as a victim. As a problem. Because that's what this was now. A problem. And problems, they have structure. They have weak points. They fall apart if you press in the right places. So instead of calling her, instead of reacting the way she clearly expected, I typed one word. Okay. Sent. No anger, no questions, no accusation. Just okay. I could almost picture her face reading it, confident, maybe even amused, thinking she'd gotten away with something clean, something final. But here's the thing. Nothing about this was final. I slowly reached for the tray beside my bed and pulled my laptop closer. My fingers moved carefully, still stiff but steady enough. Login. Passwords. Documents. Records. If you're wondering why I wasn't panicking, why I wasn't calling a lawyer immediately, why I wasn't losing my mind over the fact that my own sister just sold my house, it's because one detail kept repeating in my head. Over and over. I signed for you. I paused, staring at the screen as it loaded. Then I whispered, barely loud enough for even myself to hear. That's going to be a problem. And the moment that thought fully settled in, everything changed. That's going to be a problem. I didn't say it out of anger. I said it because I knew something Rachel didn't. And if you've ever had that kind of moment where someone thinks they've outplayed you, but they're missing one critical piece, you know exactly how quiet things get right before everything flips. The laptop screen finished loading. Property records, county database, public access. I typed in the address slowly, carefully, like the act itself deserved precision. The house came up instantly. Status, sold. I leaned back slightly, letting that sink in. So she actually did it. This wasn't a bluff, not an exaggeration, not one of Rachel's usual I handled it situations where things were still halfway done. No, she had pushed this all the way through. There was even a date listed, 3 days ago. 3 days. Which meant while I was lying here barely able to sit up without help, she was out there finalizing paperwork, talking to agents, closing deals, and signing my name like it was nothing. I scrolled further. Buyer information, agency involved, transaction details. Everything looked legitimate. That's what made it dangerous. Because from the outside, this wasn't chaos. It was clean, organized, convincing. And that's when most people would panic. Because how do you fight something that already looks finished? But here's the part Rachel didn't understand. A deal doesn't matter if it was built on something that doesn't exist. I opened another file, then another. Old documents, scans, legal forms. Months ago. That's where the real story was. See, after our mom passed, the house was left to both of us. 50-50. Clean split, no surprises. At least, that's how Rachel saw it. But months later, things changed. And Rachel was there when they did. She just didn't realize what she was signing. I paused again, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you actually read every word of something you signed? Every clause, every line, every implication? Or did you trust the person handing it to you? Because Rachel trusted me. Not out of kindness, out of habit. And habits, they make people careless. A soft knock pulled me out of my thoughts. A nurse stepped in, offering a small smile. You doing okay? I nodded, minimizing the screen slightly. Yeah, just catching up on some stuff. Family? She asked casually. I hesitated for half a second, then gave a simple answer. Something like that. She adjusted the IV, checked the monitor, and left just as quietly as she came. And the moment the door closed, my focus snapped right back. I pulled up the final document. The one that mattered. The one Rachel forgot existed. My name sat at the top. Clear, undisputed. And right beneath it, the line that changed everything. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled slowly and closed the laptop halfway. Because now, it wasn't about if this would fall apart. It was about when, and more importantly, how far I was going to let it go before I stopped it. 3 days. That's how long I decided to wait. Not because I had to, but because sometimes the longer someone believes they've won, the harder it hits when they realize they haven't. I picked up my phone again, opening Rachel's last message. I signed for you. Haha. My thumb hovered over the screen for a second. Then I locked it, set it down, and let the silence settle back into the room. Because somewhere out there, Rachel was celebrating, and she had no idea. She didn't just cross a line. She stepped into something she couldn't walk back from. Rachel didn't just cross a line, she forged one. That realization didn't hit me all at once. It unfolded slowly, piece by piece, like something I'd already known but hadn't needed to confront until now. Let me take you back for a second. Growing up, Rachel was always the one in control. Older by 4 years, louder, more confident, always a step ahead in conversations, decisions, everything. If there was a form to sign, she signed it. If there was a call to make, she made it. And if I disagreed, she'd smile and say, "Relax, I handled it." Most of the time, it worked out. That's the part that makes people like Rachel dangerous. Not because they always do the wrong thing, but because they do the wrong thing just rarely enough that you stop questioning them. I didn't. Not completely. But I also didn't fight her every time. It was easier not to. Easier to let her take the lead, especially when things felt small. But the house? That was never small. After our mom passed, it was the only thing that felt stable. Untouched. Ours. The paperwork was clear. 50/50 ownership. At least at first. I remember the conversation months later when I brought up refinancing. We were sitting at the kitchen table, same house, sunlight coming through the window, paperwork spread between us. Rachel barely skimmed it. "Is this going to make things easier?" she asked. "Yes," I told her, calm, simple. "Then just tell me where to sign." She didn't ask questions, didn't read the details, didn't hesitate. That moment stayed with me now, sitting in that hospital bed, replaying in perfect clarity, because that was the moment everything shifted. Back to the present. I reopened the property listing and studied it more closely. Everything about the sale looked polished. Professional photos, updated descriptions, even the renovations I paid for were highlighted, like selling points she could take credit for. And the buyers? I zoomed in on the name again. Something about it felt familiar. Not personal, but procedural. Like I'd seen it in a different context before. That mattered. Because if this turned into what I thought it would, every detail would matter. I switched tabs again, pulling up the county's official record. Ownership history. Transfers. Legal filings. There it was, clear as day. No ambiguity, no shared ownership, just one name. Mine. I leaned back slightly, letting that settle. So, how did Rachel pull this off? Simple. She didn't think she needed permission. She thought authority was enough. That if she acted like the owner, signed like the owner, spoke like the owner, no one would question it. And for a while, no one did. That's the part most people don't realize. Systems don't always fail loudly. Sometimes they fail quietly, until it's too late. Or in this case, until someone decides to let it go just far enough. My phone buzzed suddenly, snapping me out of the thought. A notification? Not from Rachel this time. From a real estate app. Congratulations, a property you're linked to has been successfully sold. I stared at it for a second, then let out a slow breath. So even the system still thought this was real. Still recognized the transaction. Still believed everything was complete. That meant one thing. This wasn't going to unravel gently. It was going to collapse. And when it did, it wouldn't just hit Rachel. It would hit everyone involved. I picked up my phone, opening the buyer's profile again. This time, I didn't just glance at the name. I studied it carefully, because now I knew exactly why it felt familiar. And the moment it clicked, I whispered under my breath, "Oh, Rachel didn't just mess up." A pause. Cold, certain. She made this irreversible. 3 days. That's how long I waited. No angry calls. No legal threats. No dramatic confrontation. Just silence. Let me ask you something. What's more unsettling? Someone who reacts immediately or someone who doesn't react at all? Because Rachel expected a reaction, and when she didn't get one, she filled in the silence herself. By the end of day 1, she texted again. "You're really not going to say anything?" I didn't respond. Day 2, she switched tones. "Honestly, this worked out better for both of us. You couldn't even live there right now." Still nothing from me. By day 3, she stopped explaining and started celebrating. I saw it without even trying. Mutual friends. Tagged posts, a photo of her standing in front of the house with a bright smile and a caption, "Close the deal. Sometimes you just have to step up and handle things yourself." Handle things. There it was again. That same phrase. Only this time, it wasn't quiet. It wasn't private. It was public. And that made what was coming unavoidable. Meanwhile, I was still in the hospital. Same room, same quiet, but everything underneath it had shifted. Because while Rachel was posting, I was preparing. I made one call. Daniel Brooks, 45, real estate attorney, calm, precise, and most importantly, very hard to surprise. He picked up on the second ring. "Elena, it's been a while." "It has," I said. "I need you to look at something." I didn't over-explain, didn't dramatize. I just sent the documents. The listing, the sale record, and then the one file that mattered. There was a pause on the line while he reviewed everything. Long enough to feel intentional. Finally, he spoke. "This shouldn't have gone through." I didn't respond. He continued, slower this time. "You're still on the deed, not partially, not jointly." A beat? Entirely. There it was. The first real crack in everything Rachel thought she'd secured. I closed my eyes for a second, not out of relief, but confirmation. Because knowing something and hearing it validated, two very different things. "So what happens now?" I asked. Another pause. "If what I'm seeing is accurate, this sale isn't valid at all. And if someone signed on your behalf without authorization..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Fraud doesn't require dramatic language. It speaks for itself. Most people at this point would say, "Stop it, reverse it, fix it now." I didn't. Instead, I said something that made him pause again. "Not yet." Silence. "Elena, the longer this sits..." "I know," I cut in calmly. "That's the point. Because here's the truth. Stopping it early would have protected Rachel. Letting it continue? That changed everything." There was a shift in his tone after that. Subtle, but noticeable. What do you need from me? I'm sending you one more document, I said. File it today. I attached it immediately. He opened it. Another pause. Okay, he said finally. This will complicate things. I know. And you're sure? I didn't hesitate. Yes. We ended the call. No drama, no raised voices. Just decisions. Careful ones. Final ones. An hour later, I signed the document electronically and sent it back. Simple action. Massive impact. Meanwhile, across town, Rachel was still living in a version of reality where everything had already worked, where the house was gone, where I was out of the picture. And just to make sure she stayed in that mindset, I finally texted her. Hope everything goes smoothly. Her reply came fast. It already did. I stared at the message for a moment, then locked my phone. Because she wasn't wrong. Everything had gone smoothly. Too smoothly. And that's what made what was coming next unavoidable. She thought I was wishing her luck. A pause settles in. Quiet. Controlled. I was giving her time to dig deeper. The call came at 9:12 a.m. Not to me. To Rachel. And everything started to fall apart from there. I wasn't in the room, obviously, but I didn't need to be. Because later, through voicemails, messages, and everything that followed, I was able to piece it together almost perfectly. It started small. Confusion. The kind that doesn't feel dangerous at first. Rachel answered her phone expecting routine, maybe a final confirmation, maybe congratulations, maybe something that reinforced what she already believed. That this was done. Instead, she got hesitation. Hey, Rachel, we're running into a small issue with the title. A small issue. That phrase does a lot of work, doesn't it? It softens the blow, buys time, keeps people calm right before everything escalates. What kind of issue? She probably asked, already slightly annoyed. A pause on the other end. Well, it's about ownership verification. That's when the tone shifts. Because ownership isn't a detail. It's the foundation. Rachel would have straightened up at that, maybe paced a little, maybe smiled it off at first. I already handled all of that, she likely said. Confident, controlled. Another pause. Yes, that's what we thought too. Thought. Past tense. And then came the line that changed everything. There's no record of you having authority to sell the property. Silence. Not the calm kind. The kind that stretches just long enough for reality to start breaking through. That doesn't make sense, Rachel would have said quickly. I signed everything. Yes, the agent replied carefully. That's actually part of the problem. Because signatures, they're only as strong as the authority behind them. And Rachel didn't have any. What she did have was something else entirely. Forgery. The word might not have been said yet, but it was already there, lurking underneath every sentence. Meanwhile, I was sitting in my hospital bed, phone face down beside me, already knowing what time it was. Because Daniel had called me earlier that morning. Title company flagged it. He said simply, "It's moving now." Moving. That was all I needed to hear. Back on Rachel's end, things escalated fast. The buyer's agent pulled back. The title company started reviewing documents more closely, signatures were compared, dates questioned, authorization demanded. And then, the detail Rachel never saw coming. There's been a recent update to the deed. That's when the ground disappears. Because confusion can be explained, but documentation doesn't argue. It just exists. What update? She would have asked. Sharper now. Less control, more edge. A shuffle of papers on the other end. You're not listed as an owner. Not partially. Not incorrectly. Not at all. Gone. And just like that, everything she built this on collapsed. I imagine that's the moment her confidence cracked. Because suddenly, this wasn't about pushing something through. It was about explaining something that shouldn't have been possible in the first place. Her calls to me started minutes later. First one, casual. I didn't answer. Second, shorter. Third, longer. By the fourth, the tone had changed completely. Call me back. Now. I let it ring. Then came the text. What's going on? Why are they saying I'm not on the deed? Elena. That one had weight to it. No emojis, no attitude, just my name. And then finally, what did you do? I picked up the phone, stared at the message, and for the first time since all of this started, I responded, I didn't do anything. A pause. Then I added one more line. Slowly, intentionally. I just made sure everything was already mine. And somewhere in that exact moment, Rachel realized this wasn't a mistake. It was a trap she walked into herself. I just made sure everything was already mine. That was the moment everything finally aligned. Not just for Rachel, for everyone involved. Because up until then, there was still confusion, still assumptions, still people trying to figure out how something like this could even happen. But once the documents were pulled, all of them, there was no room left for interpretation. Months before the accident, before the hospital, before any of this escalated, I made a decision. Not out of fear, not out of suspicion, just clarity. Rachel and I weren't the same when it came to responsibility. That had always been true. And while I didn't expect her to do something like this, I did understand one thing. She didn't respect boundaries. So when I brought up refinancing the house, it wasn't just about lowering payments or restructuring finances. It was about ownership, control, finality. The paperwork I showed her that day, it wasn't temporary. It wasn't shared. It was a full transfer of ownership from both of us. To me, clean, legal, verified. And Rachel, she signed it without reading. Because she trusted the version of control she thought she still had, from that moment on, the house wasn't ours. It was mine, entirely. Which means when Rachel later decided to sell it, she wasn't acting as a co-owner. She was acting as someone with no legal authority at all. And when she signed my name, that wasn't a shortcut. That was forgery. The reason the sale even made it as far as it did came down to one thing: process gaps. Initial checks passed based on submitted documents. The system assumed legitimacy because everything looked correct. But final verification? That's where truth matters. And truth doesn't bend. Once the title company cross-referenced the most recent deed, everything unraveled. Immediately. The sale was voided. The transfer halted. And every single signature Rachel provided, flagged. Rachel called me 11 times that day. Left 6 voicemails. I listened to one. Just one. Her voice was different. No confidence, no sarcasm, no ha-ha. Just pressure. Elena, you need to call me back. This is serious. A pause. Then sharper. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're making this worse. And then finally, a crack. Please just call me. I stopped it there. Deleted the message. Not out of anger. Not even out of satisfaction. Just because I didn't need to hear the rest. There was nothing left to explain. She understood. That's all that mattered. Back in the hospital, I sat quietly, phone in my hand, and for the first time since this started, I let myself feel it. Not relief. Not victory. Just stillness. The kind that comes when something chaotic finally settles into something clear. This didn't end quietly. It couldn't, because Rachel hadn't just made a mistake. She created a chain reaction. Legal consequences came first. The buyers who had already wired funds and begun preparations to move in immediately backed out once the title issue surfaced. But they didn't walk away clean. They filed for damages against Rachel. The real estate agency, once confident in the deal, distanced themselves quickly. Internal reviews started. Emails were pulled. Documentation examined. And Rachel, she was at the center of all of it. Forgery, misrepresentation, fraud. Not accusations, documented facts. Whether it escalated into formal charges depended on how far the investigation went, but one thing was certain. This wasn't something she could talk her way out of. Then came the social fallout. Family found out, not through her. Through paperwork, through calls, through questions she couldn't answer. The narrative she always controlled, gone, replaced with something far less flexible. Evidence. People who once trusted her started pulling back. Conversations changed. Invitations stopped. Because control only works when people believe you deserve it. And that belief was broken. And finally, us. Rachel kept trying to reach me for a few more days. Texts, calls, even one email. I didn't respond. Not once. There wasn't a conversation left to have. A week later, I was discharged. Walking out of the hospital felt different than walking in. Less uncertainty. More weight, but the kind you understand how to carry. When I got home, the house was exactly how I left it. No moving trucks. No new owners. No sold sign. Just quiet. Still mine. I stepped inside slowly, taking in the familiar space, the floors I paid for, the walls I painted, the decisions I made, uninterrupted, untouched. And for a moment, I just stood there, not thinking about Rachel, not thinking about the calls or the messages or the fallout, just present. Because in the end, she thought she was taking something from me. She thought I was too weak, too distracted, too far removed to stop her. But the truth? I didn't stop her. I let her continue. Far enough that there was no way back. I set my keys down on the counter, exhaled quietly, and looked around one last time. Then I said it out loud. Not for anyone else. Just for myself. She really thought it was hers to sell. A small pause. And then it never was.
If your own family did this, would you forgive them or make it worse?